This application seeks planning permission for the demolition of existing buildings and the erection of a 2 to 10 storey building comprising 102 residential units and 780 square metres of commercial floor space at Wych Elm House. The site shown in red, the site is vacant except for Harlow Pharmacy. The Vets adjoins but is outside the site to the east, and the Wych Elm car park is to the north. The land to the front and side of the site is within council ownership. Council's current local plan proposals map shows the site as being on the edge of the town centre, but the emerging local plan map shows that it would be included within the town centre boundary. This plan shows the ground floor of the proposal in context. There would be 4 commercial units at ground floor, one of which would be for the retention of the pharmacy. The other 3 units could either be shops, financial and professional services, or restaurants and cafes. There would also be parking on the ground floor and the first floor, with the residential units on the second floor and above. It is considered that this mixed-use scheme accords with the preferred use of the site within both the adopted and the emerging local plans, and it also appears to be compatible with the emerging intentions of the town centre area action plan. There would be a podium of open space at second floor level, including an area for play facilities. Furthermore, each flat would have a balcony or terrace. 10% of the units would be able to accommodate wheelchair users, which is building control category M43, and all of the other flats would be adaptable for wheelchair users, which would be M42. This slide shows how the amount of units reduces as height increases, with the majority of the residential development being 5 and 6 stories in height. The tallest part of the proposal will be adjacent to the highway junction, which is considered to accord with good design principles. The commercial units would be highly glazed at ground floor, and alternating fenestration layouts and balconies would provide rhythm to the facade of the residential element. So that slide there is from 4th Avenue, obviously. Although it might be hard to see on the screen, there will be variation in the patterns of materials and brickwork to provide visual interest, which that slide is trying to show. But some of those elements might be able to be seen a bit more easily on this 3D model. These photos are of the front of the site. None of the trees around the site are proposed for removal, and conditions are recommended to ensure that they are safeguarded. In these photos you can see the context of the site more widely. The top left photo shows Terminus House visible, and the top right shows Joseph Rank House, which is nearby. In the context of these buildings, and with the 13-storey building approved at the angle nearby, and up to 16 stories approved around the former Little Walk area, it's considered that the proposed height of the proposal is appropriate within that context. In the left photo you can also see the desire lines across the frontage have resulted in dirt paths being made. In order to help achieve integration with the rest of the town, improvements to the space in front of the site and public art would be provided. It is considered that this would help the proposal to act as a catalyst for regeneration of this northern part of the town. These photos are from the west. Again, you can see how the presence of Joseph Rank House provides a context for taller forms of development. These photos are from the north. It's envisaged that visitors would park in the Wych Elm car park, which is shown on the bottom left, or the car park which was shown in front of Joseph Rank House on the previous slide. Furthermore, as a result of the site potentially being designated within the town centre in the future, and because there are appropriate pedestrian crossings, so that one in the bottom right is obviously nearby, it is considered that the site is in a highly sustainable location. Similar levels of parking to that proposed have been accepted in similar locations in Harlow, and it's also worth pointing out that disabled parking would be provided for the commercial units, which means that those using those spaces would not need to cross the highway to use the pharmacy. for example, which would be an improvement over the existing situation. But notwithstanding this, a condition has been recommended to ensure that the parking spaces are in the best places they can be. Although there are clear benefits arising from the proposal, it is clearly regrettable that our viability advisors have confirmed that no affordable housing or other contributions can be provided without the scheme becoming viable. However, from previous appeals in the district, it is clear that planning obligations cannot be required where they would make a scheme viable, and that to refuse a scheme for doing so in such circumstances would be found to be unreasonable. Our advisors have suggested that controls, such as a clawback mechanism, should be imposed, which may enable affordable housing and other obligations to be provided in the future. And this and other requirements for a legal agreement, which would include securing public realm improvements to the front of the site, as I previously mentioned, are set out in the towards the concluding sections of the report. Notwithstanding the viability issue, it's considered that the proposal is acceptable in principle and compatible with the character of the area, and the proposal would provide a clear benefit in providing a mixed-use development which will increase activity and contribute to the regeneration of this area to the north of the town. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the applicant entering into an appropriate legal agreement and the conditions and informatives as set out at pages 46 to 50 of the agenda, with conditions 7, 12, 13 and 16 updated to reflect the new revisions to the plans which is set out in the committee update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Could I call Danielle St Pierre forward, please? If you could turn the mic on, there's a button, I'm not sure what colour it is on that. Red, I think. That's it. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, members. My name is Danielle and I'm the agent for the application at Wych Elm House. As Mark has explained, the proposed development seeks to provide 102 new apartments on the Wych Elm House site, which has been dilapidated for a number of years. We've been in discussion with your officers since June 2017 and seeking to bring forward a high quality scheme, and we're pleased to be able to address you today with a recommendation for approval. The new residential accommodation will be a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, each with its own balcony. The apartments will range from 44 to 58 square metres for 1 beds and 66 to 80 square metres for 2 beds. 10% are also designed to be wheelchair adaptable, as Mark mentioned. Half of the accommodation is also dual aspect, and none of the single aspect apartments will be north facing. The landscaped courtyard that's being provided on the second floor will provide almost 600 square metres of floor area, alongside a dedicated child's play space with swings, slides and climbable objects. 80 parking spaces plus 6 blue badge holder spaces are proposed to serve the new apartments, and dedicated cycle parking is also included within the proposal. The proposal has been fully accepted by Essex County Highways Authority. The proposal also seeks to provide 4 new retail units on the ground floor, with fully glazed frontages to both 4th Avenue and Hansel Road. One of the units will re-provide the local pharmacy, and dedicated blue badge holder car parking spaces are also proposed to serve the commercial units. As part of the proposal, the surrounding landscaped area will be enhanced with new public art, planting, walkways, seating and cycle parking stands, whilst retaining all of the existing trees. The cost of the improvements will be borne by the developer, and the works will create a much more attractive and safe neighbourhood around Wych Elm. The proposed Section 106 agreement also includes a viability review mechanism, as Mark mentioned, which will enable the council to review the scheme viability if the development cannot be commenced within 2 years. The proposed development will be one of the first to begin the regeneration of the Wych Elm area, which is due to be included within the council's town centre boundary shortly. The development will act as a catalyst for future residential development in the area, which is a key aim of the draft town centre area action plan. As such, on behalf of the developers and the project team, we respectfully request that you approve the development in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you.
Sorry.
Go and take a seat.
Oh, perfect, thanks.
Any questions?
What about questions?
Questions? Or we should be asking questions of officers.
Oh,
really,
actually,
shouldn't
yeah. You got caught last time.
we? Yes.
I can shout over if you need anything.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. One, is there cladding on the outside? And 2, is there going to be sprinkler systems on the inside?
I think that an element of it is cladded. There's some zinc cladding. In terms of whether there's sprinklers or not, I don't know what's proposed, but the fire service says, as they always do, that they'll assess it at building regulation stage. So all of those issues to do with cladding and fire safety are to be dealt with after the application process.
Anybody else?
It might be here, I haven't spotted it, but are these, all these for sale or some of them for rent?
I don't know. Danielle, do you know? For sale.
Anybody else? Questions?
I've got a question for the developer at some point.
So if you want to ask your question,
Yeah.
hopefully
See if I know first.
the officer will be able to answer it.
The question for the developer is, why is it not possible to develop on that site a scheme which has some affordable housing? Yes, you come forward with a scheme which hasn't got affordable housing, but it's a plot of land as and when it's knocked down. So why isn't it possible to develop a scheme, which is what we want in Harlow, which has a mixture of a mixture of tenures and a mixture of affordable and non-affordable, not non-affordable, but the more expensive housing.
I think the starting point really is what is an appropriate form of development for the site, and then the viability does tend to be later down the process, and perhaps that's a sort of a more fundamental issue. But the fact of the matter is that it's been independently assessed by viability people. The reason why it can't provide affordable housing is because the amount of value in the scheme isn't sufficiently great, again, when assessed against the costs, and all of the costs that would be imposed by having affordable housing. This has been tested independently and it's been verified that just there isn't the money in this scheme. I suppose you could work from the opposite end of the spectrum and go, well, we want to have 30% affordable housing, what could we build here?
Yes.
But that's the complete opposite of how the system works, and potentially you'd be getting something there that is an inappropriate form of development or low quality form of development. It needs to be a place-based assessment first.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. If there's no affordable housing being provided, what other contributions are being made by the developer?
There's £25,000 which is being indicated for public art and public realm enhancements to the front of the site. We haven't prescriptively had that as one of the recommended heads of terms, because obviously we want to, in order for the development to be acceptable, that block has to be suitably integrated with its surroundings, and obviously we need the scheme to be appropriate. So that is an enhancement that is being provided that is outside of their boundary, and potentially the maintenance of that space as well. But there is no affordable housing or educational NHS contributions.
Councillor Holcombe.
I would have thought that public art, although Harlow has got a lot of wonderful public art, is not as beneficial as affordable housing. So therefore I'm extremely disappointed that it's not going in, and I don't think £25,000 is a very big amount for a developer to put into Harlow.
I don't think the emphasis should be on the actual number. I think it should be that there is money to put towards enhancing the public realm outside of the site. And I do completely agree with you that if there was a bigger amount of money in the pot, that there are clearly other things that we would want to prioritise. But equally, having a site that is well integrated, that regenerates the town more widely, does have a significant benefit in itself. So I think you have to sort of see it sort of in a bigger scope of, if you improve the public realm to that area, you're improving connectivity through to Wych Elm, which is a big benefit.
Yeah. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah. In terms of the contribution, is there any contribution going in towards local primary school provision or education provision?
No, because of the viability issues.
Councillor Harlow.
So in effect, the additional costs on our health service and education is going to have to be paid by everybody else.
Partly both, but yeah, that's the answer. I've got one question. Could you tell me what the value, sale value of this will be once it's sold out, and what percentage the developer is looking to pay out of that in contributions to Harlow?
All of the viability information is being, because it's commercially sensitive, it isn't.
Well, give us a rough guess, because I'm
Well,
reckoning there's 110 properties at 200 grand each. That's quite a lot of money.
The
20 million.
The MPPF and the MPPG suggest that the developer's profit will be somewhere in the region of 15 to 20%, but that depends on the risk of the scheme, and that gets factored in.
So would you agree with me that roughly they're looking at 20 million sale value?
20 or 25.
I wouldn't be able to put a figure on that.
Okay. Any more questions? Debate.
Thank you, Chair. I just don't understand why developers come to us with a development proposal that's contrary in numerous ways to our local plan. I find it insulting that they come here and think they don't need to build it or contribute according to our local plans, which is the main affordable housing and other provisions. Why should the Harlow town be providing the additional school, additional national health, and we get no affordable housing? You know, there doesn't seem to be anything for Harlow town in this building. It's all for the builder or the developer. I'm not, you know, I'm not against capitalism. They're all in to make money. They need to do it, but surely they're wise enough and sensible enough to come up with a development that gives everybody a piece of the cake, if you like. I also think the design of the building is horrible for somewhere that's so prominent, coming up 4th Avenue. It's absolutely a disgrace, but you know, it's not part of our duty to look at that.
Councillor Clark.
It is a major development. It has some positive features, I think, in terms of like that they've all got balconies and there's a play area and the parking, limited though it is incorporated to a certain extent. But and it's on a brownfield site rather than using up green spaces, and there's an attempt to make it greenify it in a sense. But what I find absolutely outrageous is the fact that there is no affordable housing whatsoever, not even an attempt at it as in the former application. There's no public contribution, as Mike argued, to education, although we know that there's going to be further pressures from the Edinburgh Way flats, Rangor's site, and all the other developments that are taking place. This is just added on, and it will have an impact on local schools. It will certainly have an impact on Addison House, right opposite, which is already, takes you hours, I can tell you from experience, like weeks and weeks to get an appointment there. But there's no thought of a public contribution there. And I find that really, really depressing, actually. The art contribution is minor, yes, welcome, but we normally expect an art contribution. But the real problem for me is the lack of any affordable housing whatsoever. And I think we should ask and insist, to a certain extent, if we could, on developers starting off with the presumption that they are going to provide X amount of affordable housing, and then see what they can produce in relationship to areas that are going to provide profit. Thank you.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Harlow
has always been known as a place where affordable housing is part of the package that we put forward. Developers have known that, and to think that on this one, when it's so dominant within the town centre range, there's not going to be one affordable housing context, I think that's absolutely disgraceful. And the 25,000 contribution, I find that an insult as well, because nothing's going into the NHS, education, as has been stated. And I really can't support this because of our local plan projection and the fact there's no affordable housing. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Harlow.
Thank you, Chair. In all my years in the development industry, I don't think I've ever come across an application that contributes nothing to the local community. Sorry, £25,000. And I'm just, I have dealt personally with developments that look as though they're not viable on paper. And I'm thinking, I won't say where it is, but one which is very similar to this, where some extra stories were put on to make it more viable and to provide affordable housing. In fact, it went from 0 to 50% affordable just by redesigning it. Now I'm just mindful that what kind of advice was given by the officers in terms of height?
We're not on question, we're on debate.
I found this question. Well, on the basis of what we've got here, we've got to make a decision. I'm very disappointed in that you haven't put anything into this to make a contribution to Harlow generally, and I'd be very keen to hear or see that the viability reviews happen at the appointed times.
Anybody else? Edwards.
Well, I'm more than deeply disappointed. I'm extremely annoyed that there's no affordable housing here. We're looking to redevelop, as a council, we are looking to redevelop and work with developers to redevelop the town centre. We're looking to ensure that that's a mixed economy of housing, in which both people with hopefully some money and whatever you can live, but equally people who've got less means can also live. I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to vote against this scheme. My reason for voting against this scheme is, as I think we said earlier on, is that it's come from the wrong way around. Basically, that is a lump of land. If you can't, on a lump of land, it ought to be possible to devise schemes which include a percentage of affordable housing. In our local plan, we've talked about 30% affordable housing. There have been times when we've accepted less than that, but to accept nothing, it seems to me to be very much a bridge too far. So I should be voting against this.
Sorry, to have a second bite of the cherry, so to speak. I sense a feeling of liberty and where this is going. But we're also mindful that we've got to, if we're going to reject it, to have planning reasons. Can I make a proposal that we might defer this decision to allow the developer to perhaps reconsider their position?
Can we do that?
I'll second that.
So would you be, I'm not sure if we can defer it unless the developer was mindful for us to defer it for further discussions.
We worked for a prolonged period on the viability assessment. We are fully aware of the local plan policies. The site has a value attached to purchasing the site. The build costs associated with building a building on that particular site are a substantial amount of money. The contribution also to the landscape areas, albeit I appreciate that it's not potentially in the area that you might want that to be, that money to be put. It's going to improve the area and more widely.
So just to cut through, so I'm not asking you for a political statement. Sorry to cut.
The
Are you?
Assessment has been.
No, I understand that. We're well aware of that. So my question to you is, it's a very simple question. Are you prepared for us to defer this further discussions? Because I'm mindful that I believe the committee is liable to turn this down unless we defer this for further discussions.
There's no further funds to be able
Right.
to achieve.
In that case, what? Okay. Right, members, I think that there's clearly no point in deferring, and we can't defer without a good reason to defer, and that, if the developer isn't prepared to discuss it any further, we will need to come to a decision. So, therefore, we need to move to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendations which appear on pages 46 to 50 of your agenda papers, and the amendments on page 3 of the supplementary, that is recommendations 1 to 16 and informatives 1 to 5 as amended, please indicate. And all those against. That is lost. And I'm assuming it's lost on the basis of it's not in compliance with the emerging local plan, which is due to go before the inspector within the next few weeks, which you have laid weight to.
Yes. Yeah. I think you need to have a vote just to confirm that those are the reasons.
Yes.
Are those the reasons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those in favour of the reasons as indicated?
Yeah.
No. That is carried.